Alright, so we are up to day 173 of going through my old journal, and the quote for today says, 99% of the failures come from people who have the habit of making excuses. Do you have a habit of giving excuses? And if so, what excuse do you use the most? How do you feel when others give you excuses? So if you're following along, just think about how you might respond to that, and I will read what I wrote. Let's see. I'm actually so glad that I'm not writing these things out, because I feel like these are kind of hard to think about. It's easier to like kind of read back and think about them, because I'm coming close to the end of this, and I started thinking about like what's next. And I actually have another journal that's a little bit different, and I started kind of reading through some of the prompts, and I was like, oh my gosh, these are gonna be tough. But yeah, anyway, so let's see what I wrote on this. I said, I feel like when I was younger, I rarely made excuses. If anything, I was the opposite. I would apologize for things that weren't really even my fault. If someone was critical of me, I wouldn't argue. Then I said, actually, I take that back. I said, when it came to relationships, there were some times that I've been a bit stubborn with my partner and wouldn't really hear their side. I wouldn't really hear their side out when trying to communicate with me. But I feel like I've come a long way over the past few years in becoming more self-aware. Yeah, so, I do feel like there was maybe a couple people that I dated that maybe would try to point out some things, but I think I was kind of stubborn and didn't really want to listen, I guess. I can't think of like a specific example. I'm thinking of like one specific person, but I haven't really gotten much criticism from people, and it was like maybe like okay, I guess I'm not really thinking like so much that they were super critical of me, but I was doing things that like looking back I would be so critical of myself now. Like thank goodness the multi-level marketing things weren't around when I was young, because I could see myself maybe potentially getting wrapped up in some sort of like multi-level marketing scheme like 15 or 20 years ago when I was younger. But I remember, like, in particular, I was dating this guy and I wanted to try to lose weight. Like, I noticed I was gaining weight, and like I bought into like, okay, well, I'd seen all these Slim Fast commercials and Special K. I know this is embarrassing. And all this stuff. So let me try buying this stuff and seeing if that'll work. And I could tell he was like a little bit like, I don't know if this is the way to do it. But this was before like there was like all this other information on the internet and things like that. And there weren't like trainers and things, which those aren't necessarily the best places to get information. But there was like way less information. Most of the information you had about like losing weight came from advertising and things like that. And I remember him being like a little bit hesitant about like me like trying this and everything. And then yeah, like it was another one of those things where I got into it for like a week and then I just kind of like fell off of it, like I did with a lot of things. But yeah, I don't really remember anything like super specific. Like it just seemed like I felt some bit of criticism or pushback, but I was just like, no, it'll be fine, you know, kind of that sort of thing. I feel like in some instances I had to be like shown myself for me to take advice on certain things, like not all things, but just like some things maybe. And there is also this one sense that I noticed when I was like going to college. It wasn't that I necessarily felt smarter than like other people, but I think it's common in undergrad when you get access so say for instance, like in my circumstance where my family hadn't gone to college or anything, and I was learning this stuff at school, and I was coming home and I was telling them about these certain things, and it seemed like they kind of had this view that I knew more about certain things, and so I think I did have like an inflated sense of being smarter on certain things than I was. And I didn't often like vocalize it, but I realize now that sometimes I felt that way, like that I felt like I knew more than I really did, because I had this base level education that, even though it was like base level and kind of surface level from undergrad, it was still higher than like what some people had. And I see this a lot on social media. I see people who like have kind of like a base level of knowledge and things, and I don't think I would recognize this if I hadn't gone on to do a PhD, because you really do realize like it is so hard to have like a full knowledge of anything. If someone is out here being like confident that they know this, like a lot of times, even especially if you've learned stuff in undergrad, you don't actually know it. You're just like repeating like things that you've learned or things that other people have said. And that's really common with like even outside of academic stuff. You know, you'll read something on the news or you'll read something online and you'll think you know this because you've read this, but you can't really explain it, and maybe it's not right. But yeah, I think there were some cases that I felt like I knew more than I did about certain things, and so I would be a little bit more unwilling to like push back when someone would, and I think that's the thing, like most of the time people didn't really have a specific like reasoning as to why they thought it was wrong. They were just like, I'm not sure if that's right, but they couldn't give me like a reason, and so I felt like, well, no, then I must be right. If that makes sense. This is kind of rambling. I don't really know what I'm getting at there, but I remember thinking like I felt like I was right more, even if I didn't like communicate it openly to people, than I do now. Now I'm just like, I don't know. Like, could be right, could be wrong. Give me more information and I'll form kind of what I think is an opinion. But then if you have even more information that disputes that, I may change my opinion. So I'm not set on any opinion. I'm definitely not stubborn in any way on that anymore. So yeah, let's see. Yeah, become more self-aware. I said, as far as others giving me excuses, I feel like I'm pretty understanding. I said, like, the way our society is currently structured kind of sucks. I said, if workers at certain jobs are lazy or seemingly incompetent, I don't get upset. I actually make excuses for them, I think, because you know, I've been in these certain fields. Like, I've worked a lot of service industry jobs and I understand what it's like. And I understand that for me it was different because I was working those jobs, but at the same time I felt like this is not the end all be all for me. I'm going to school, I'm gonna be doing something else. So, but then, you know, feeling like these people, this is their job, this is how they're making money, this is how they're getting by. And like, I understand why they're frustrated and why it sucks. And there was even some people that I worked with at Walmart, like, because when I would do these jobs, I'd be like, well, it's a job. I'm here working. I'm going to keep busy and do what I need to do and try to be the best at what I'm doing. Even though in a lot of cases, some jobs I was definitely being exploited and like working harder than like what I was paid or how I was treated by people. Just because I was kind of a perfectionist. I wanted to do a good job. And I remember there was some people that were just doing like the bare minimum and just like keeping their head down, and just like they wouldn't get stressed if like something went wrong at the job, where I was like stressed. I'm like, okay, I want to make this right, this needs to be right, blah blah blah, and would try my hardest to like go above and beyond. And then these people that didn't, I wasn't upset at them, and I still remember, like, even though I didn't get it, I kind of had a respect for them, because I'm like, they're not letting any of this bother them. Like, they are so unbothered by all of this. I didn't understand it then, but I get it now. And like, people, you know, talking about, what is it called? There's a term that's been going around, where you don't quit your job, but you kind of quit your job, by just doing like the bare minimum to get, what is that word? I can't believe I can't think of it. Quiet quitting. And that's what those people were doing. But it's like people are doing it in mass now, and they're doing it in fields that they weren't doing it before. But yeah, like if I get bad service at a place or something, I'm just kind of like, I get it. You're not paid enough to care. Like, this isn't your business. This isn't, you're not realistically gonna be moving up or, you know, whatever. So once that realization hits, why are you gonna go above and beyond for people, managers that aren't treating you well? And that's one thing when I see like some of these businesses are posting like kind of these passive aggressive things of like, well, we can't stay open because we can't find anybody willing to work. And I'm like, okay, I don't really want to patronize your business, because what I'm assuming is if you can't find people willing to stay and work, you've got to be like, number one, not paying them well enough, and number two, not treating them well enough. Because even in jobs where the pay was not good, people will stay if you treat them well, if you respect them, if you know, like, yeah, some people are just like not good people and they're bad workers, but like if you're really having a problem keeping workers, like, you're not gonna be a good manager. And that's what I saw. Like, I worked several service jobs at different places, and they're all pretty much the same, but the difference, I mean, the pay is gonna be the same, but the difference is how people manage it. And there was one place, Chili's, there was a Chili's in town that I worked at, and back at that time, like, there were a lot of people that had worked at that Chili's for years because they stayed, because most of the managers were like good people. They hired from within and they moved up from serving into management, and they understood and they treated the employees really well. And then I worked in this other restaurant where these people, I don't think had ever been servers, had ever like done restaurant management before. I think it was the brother of the guy who just bought this franchise, and his brother made him and his wife the manager, and they were terrible. They were terrible. They treated the employees terrible. They just treated us like, I mean, the interview, they asked some very inappropriate questions. And then like the first day when we had like our little meeting before the shift started, she was talking about like the drama, and all the drama has to stop. And I was like, that's kind of a weird thing to say. And then I realized, like, the drama is you. The drama is you and your kids that you have work here. Like, I understand why you have such high turnover, because you're not a good manager. So anyway, like, when I see that, when I kind of give people some leeway, even people that are just acting really crazy and stuff. And, you know, I try to give them some grace of like, I don't know what's going on in their life. I don't know, you know, what led them to be this way, but, you know, yeah. So I tend to make excuses for people, but there are people, if you're around them long enough, they constantly are making excuses, and you realize that like, okay, their problems are their fault because they're always making excuses. But anyway, let me see what else I wrote. So yeah, I kind of go on and say that. I say, you know, most people don't get paid enough or treated well enough or respected enough to be expected to give their all just so someone else can make money. I said, I mean, there, of course, there are exceptions. Some people really are terrible people who will take all they can at the expense of others. But I think most people are just trying to get by the best they can. And so, yeah, I mean, I've seen both sides of that. My dad is one of those people that will like take what they can and just keep taking and keep taking and keep making excuses as for why their lives are so bad, when from people who are around them, they can see that it's clear, like, you've ostracized everyone in your life because you just keep taking from them. But I don't think most people are like that. I hope. Maybe I have too much like faith in humanity. But yeah. Anyway, that's what I wrote about that. So I will be back tomorrow with day 174. Baby too, look at those little toes.